Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat, Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
So today we are going to start the 4th chapter. We have completed 3 chapters. And to briefly tell you, remember, the first chapter of the Gita presented the problem of the fundamental human problem, which we call samsara, and which is in the nature of ragaha, shokaha, and moha. Which samsara basically means it has 3 aspects, and that is attachment, ragaha, and shokaha is sorrow, moha is confusion or delusion. So the combination of these 3, attachment, then sorrow, and delusion, is what we call samsara. And everybody is subject to it in some form or the other. So the raga basically is the problem of emotional dependence upon something other than yourself. Mostly other people, but can also be on other objects and other events. So that is raga, the problem of attachment. Shoka means because of this raga, when the demands of the raga are not fulfilled, then the mind faces the problems of sorrow, that is shokaha. And when the mind is in the grip of this emotional dependence, ragaha, and shokaha, sorrow, the emotions are so strong that the mind is not able to think properly. It is not able to use its viveka shakti, the discriminative power, and therefore there is a conflict in thinking, conflict in taking decisions. This is the 3rd problem, shoka. And remember here that Krishna is not functioning as the Lord. In this entire Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is the Acharya, the Guru only. And that is why in the Dhyana Shlokas we say Vande Guru Parampara. He is the Guru only. Now, people in various stages of spiritual development, they have various relationships with Krishna. For example, we had a lady once upon a time in this group who would talk to Krishna every day, right? So for him, Krishna was a friend. We have people who look upon Krishna as the father. We have people who look upon Krishna as a very good friend, as a sakha. All those things are there. But for us, Krishna is what? Guru eva. For us, the Vedantic student, the Shastric student, Krishna is only the Guru. Is the Guru only, not only the Guru. And that is why in the 2nd chapter, Arjuna did a very intelligent act by surrendering to Lord Krishna and asking him to teach him. And thus, from the 2nd chapter onwards, Krishna started working on the solution. What was Krishna's approach? That Atma Jnanam alone is the final remedy. Any other solution can only be patchwork, can only be a palliative. Because of that alone, that approach, that the final solution can be only Atma Jnanam, because of that approach only, the Bhagavad Gita is called Atma Vidya. And Krishna talked about, now we are talking about the entire 2nd, 3rd chapter. Okay. So Krishna talked in those chapters about 2 stages of spiritual sadhana. The first is the stage of pravrittihi, activity, where there is karma yoga. It's an active stage of sadhana. And the 2nd stage is nivrittihi, withdrawal from activity. And that is Jnānayoga, which is a withdrawn stage. What was karma yoga prescribed for? It was prescribed for as a means of chitta shuddhi, mental purity. And Krishna makes it clear several times that karma yoga cannot give liberation. Karma Yoga can only give preparation. And preparation itself cannot give you your final product. That is moksha. After preparation means after doing Karma Yoga to get rid of mala, and after Upasana Yoga to get rid of Vikshepa, then one has to come to Jnana Yoga, which is Shravanam, Maranam, and then Nididhyasanam. Shravanam here, of course, means Shravanam of the Vedantic texts. And the second chapter, therefore, presented the whole sadhana in a nutshell. So, second chapter is basically an opening summary for the Gita. Similarly, the 18th chapter is the closing summary. Whatever is being taught between the third chapter and the 17th chapter is again summarized in the 18th chapter. So, second chapter was opening summary. The third chapter happens to be an elaboration of Karma Yoga. And the fourth and fifth chapters are going to be the Vyakhyanam, the elaboration of Jnana Yoga. Why 2 chapters? Because Jnana Yoga is much more subtle. And to understand these 2 chapters, remember this 4th and 5th chapter are basically a commentary, what is called Vyakhyanam, of the 13 verses, 14 verses. Which ones? Chapter 2, verse number 12 to verse number 25. Okay, these verses. And therefore, it's important that we are familiar with those verses, not just the words, but the content also. And that's why I put a post in the Gita saying that, in the Gita group, saying that please read that portion. And I will request you to keep reading that portion as often as possible until at least we have completed the 5th chapter. Ideally, that portion contains the entire Atma Jnanam, so it should be read regularly in your life. And the more you read, remember, the Vidya is such that the more you read, the more you understand. But anyway, at least until we have finished the 5th chapter, minimum, that is, you should read these for 13-14 verses very regularly. Read the commentary, listen to the talk, make your own notes. And every time that we talk about it in chapter 4 and 5, you will find that you can add to your notes. The notes which you made in the 2nd chapter, you will find that those can be expanded from what we are learning here. What is the summary? What is the name of this chapter? Jnana Karma Sannyasa. Right? Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. Yoga, as you know, what does the word yoga mean in every chapter? You will find chapter ends with yoga. So this is yoga is just the title of the chapter. Okay, that yoga has to be understood as the name of the chapter, title of the chapter. And therefore, the title of the chapter is Jnana Karma Sannyasa. Right? Now, there was a student once in TTC when I talked about Jnana Karma Sannyasa, he was very happy. You know why? He said, "Oh, Raviji, that means you have to do sannyasa of Jnana and Karma both. You know, you have to renounce both Jnanam and Karma." So that is not the correct understanding. Jnana Karma Sannyasa does not mean sannyasa of Jnanam and Karma. What does it mean? It means Jnanena Karma Sannyasa. By using Jnanam, through the Jnanam that you have acquired, you will renounce Karma. That is what it means. And therefore, the next question is, does it mean that once you are a Jnani, you renounce all Karma? No. Do you remember the 5th verse of the last chapter? Nahi kaschit chanamapi jatu tishthatya karmakrit shariryatra api chate na prasiddhyeda karmanaha. Not for a single moment can a person who has a body avoid karma. Even the very journey of the body will not be possible without doing karma. And then Krishna very clearly has said that the body, everybody's body, whether it be the Ajnani's body or whether it be the Jnani's body, to survive itself, Sharir Yatra api, to survive itself. What is the Sharir Yatra? The Yatra from the womb to the tomb, from your birth to death. That The yatra itself, that journey itself requires some sort of karma for survival. And hence, we have to understand that Shastra makes it very clear that nobody can renounce karma. Nobody can renounce karma. And therefore, when Vedanta talks about karma sannyasa, you have to understand that activity which is meant for the sustenance of the body, that activity will have to be continued. Because without the body, you can't be alive anyway. What then is meant by Jnana Karma Sannyasa? As I said, it is Jnanena Karma Sannyasa. This is the understanding that all karma belongs to the body alone, belongs to the Anatma alone. And therefore, in that understanding, I drop the idea that I am doing any karma. My body does karma according to its prarabdha. But I don't do any karma. That understanding is Jnana Karma Sannyasa. So I am Asanga Atma. I am the Atma which is not connected to the body. And therefore, these karma do not belong to me at all. In fact, we should say, at this stage of our study, we should be looking a little bit further and we should be saying that three things do not belong to me. The Anatma, which are my three bodies. The Anatma karma, which are the karma done by these three bodies. And the Anatma karma phalam. All these three, they do not belong to me. Why? Because Anatma is mithya. Anatma is a dependent entity, dependent upon me for survival, and therefore Anatma is mithya. And if Anatma is mithya, then the karma of the Anatma is also mithya. If the karma of the Anatma is mithya, then the karma phalam is also mithya. And therefore, none of them can possibly belong to me. None of them can possibly touch me. This total disconnection idea, the total idea that I am completely disconnected from these three, Anatma, Anatma karma phalam. They don't belong to me at all. This idea, this total disassociation is called Jnana Karma Sannyasa. And the whole Jnana Karma Sannyasa is achieved through the process of cognition only. Shravanam, Mananam, and then Nididhyasanam. There is no physical dissociation. It is internal renunciation. This, in fact, is not only the theme of the 4th chapter and the 5th chapter. This particular idea that I am not associated with Anatma or its karma phalam. This idea is the theme not only of the 4th chapter, it is the theme of the entire Bhagavad Gita. You will find this theme running, if you look carefully, this running theme you will find in every chapter. And not only that, when we study the Upanishads, you will find that this is the main theme of the Upanishads also. This theme, therefore, is called the Tatparya, the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, the essence of every chapter, the essence of the Veda also. Okay, now to recall, how many disciplines have we studied so far in chapter 2 and 3? We did Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. And here, to this chapter, Shankara gives a very beautiful introduction. So he says, I am Yogaha Uktaha. So I am giving you the Sanskrit words because there is a beauty in it. And since most of you are familiar with Hindi, it should not provide any very great difficulty. Okay, so I am Yogaha Uktaha. I am is this. Yogaha is the discipline. I am Yogaha Uktaha means so far this yoga has been taught. This yoga, one yoga has been taught. And that one yoga is what Sannyasaha Karma Yoga Upayaha. So remember here, the word sannyasa is to be equated to the word Sankhya, which is to be equated to the word Jnana Yoga. So whenever he says sannyasa, contextually, of course, sannyasa is used in different meanings. In every context, we will explain. But here in his commentary, when he says sannyasaha, it means Jnana Yoga. Karma Yoga Upayaha Sannyasaha. He says Karma Yoga is the Upaya. Upaya is what? What is upay? Is
Instrument.
the means. Is the means, the tool.
Solution.
The solution you can say, but you can say it's a means or the tool. So he says Karma Yoga is the tool for sannyasa, for Jnana Yoga. Okay, this is a very important thing. That Karma Yoga is only the tool for Jnana Yoga. And we will see over the period of the Gita teaching that Shankara repeats this idea again and again and again so as to drive into our head that Karma Yoga is only a first step. It is not the destination. And Shankara says here that Krishna has not taught karma. Okay, very clearly saying Krishna is not teaching karma. He is teaching only jnanam. So there are some people who say that, Krishna taught jnana karma samuchaya. They interpret the Bhagavad Gita to mean a teaching of jnana karma samuchaya, and samuchaya means combination. So he says that Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, some people say, there are philosophers who say that Krishna has taught a combination of karma and jnanam, which is called jnana karma samuchaya. These people are called jnana karma samuchayavadis, the people who propagate this theory that Krishna has taught jnana karma samuchaya. And this jnana karma samuchayavadis were apparently very powerful during Shankaracharya's time, because he spends a lot of time in each bhashan of his repudiating that, saying that no, this is not correct. He refutes that contention everywhere. Why does he say that? Because once you accept that Krishna taught jnana karma samuchaya, you are accepting that he is taught both karma and jnanam. And since his teaching is basically for Shreyaha, you remember what Arjuna said, please tell me what is Shreyaha, what is good for me. Therefore, it means that both karma and jnanam will have direct contribution to moksha. So this is the contention of the jnana karma samuchayavadis. They say, yes, Krishna taught jnanam, it is true. But Krishna also taught karma, which means after having got jnanam, to get moksha, karma is necessary. That is the contention of the jnana karma samuchayavadis. That just jnanam will not give you moksha. You have to combine it with karma also. Then only can it give you moksha. That is why they are called jnana karma samuchayavadis. Their objective is also the same, moksha. But unlike us, they say jnanam and karma have to be combined to give moksha. While we say what? Jnanat eva kaivalya. Only jnanam alone will give you moksha. We don't say karma has no contribution. We say karma has a contribution, but only indirectly, right? So, some people, the Jnana Karma Samuchayavadis, for example, they are very clear that without karma there can be no moksha. And when we point to some people like Ramana Maharshi, we say Ramana Maharshi got jnanam apparently without karma in this life, right? But we say that is not possible because Ramana Maharshi would have got Chitta Shuddhi in a previous life. Obviously, in this life he didn't have any sadhana. So he's pointing out and saying that Ramana Maharshi is actually a perfect example for us. We say without jnanam, without any karma, he got jnanam. He got jnanam and he got moksha, right? Because this life he didn't do anything. So no samuchaya. But we have to understand carefully, saying that we do not negate the role of karma for Ramana Maharshi. We simply say that in this life he didn't do any karma apparently, but karma would have been done, upasana would have been done as a sadhana in a previous janma, in a purva janma. Then only he would have got chitta shuddhi. Then only he would have assimilated the teaching, and then only he would have got free. So Shankara adds here, ataha, therefore, vedartham parisamaptam. It's very, in Shankara's terms, at the end of the third chapter, he says, ataha, vedartham parisamaptam. The teaching has now been completed. For as far as Shankara is concerned, Krishna's entire teaching has been finished, is over, where? At the end of chapter 3. Why? Because chapter 2 those 13, 14 verses, chapter 11 to 25, 12 to 25, they cover the entire Jnana Yoga. And Karma Yoga is covered in the balance of chapter 2 and in chapter 3. So for a person like Shankaracharya, the teaching is complete. That's why he says, Ataha Vedartham Parisamaptam. Well, but for people like us who do not have that level of sadhana chatushtayam, we need more. We need to be taught more. And that is why Krishna continues. Krishna knows that Arjuna is not like Shankaracharya. It's not sufficient for him. So Krishna continues. With this background, we will chant the first verse of the 4th chapter. So please unmute yourself. अथ चतुर्थोऽध्यायः ज्ञानकर्मसन्न्यासयोगः श्रीभगवानुवाच इमं विवस्वते योगम्
Imam vipate yogam.
इमं विवस्वते योगम्
Imam vipate yogam.
प्रोक्तवानहमव्ययम् विवस्वान्मनवे प्राह मुनिरिक्ष्वा कवे ब्रवीत्. Okay. As usual, we'll first go to the grammar portion. So, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Lord said, Imam Vivasvate Yogam. Then Proktavan, the na with a halant. Proktavan Aham Avyayam. That last word of the first line is Proktavan Aham Avyayam. Then Vivaswan, again na with a halant. Vivaswan Manave Praha. Then Manuhu, Manu with a Visarga, Manuhu Ikshavaktve, the avagraha is dropped over there, Abravit. So Vivasvan Manave Prahaha Manuhu Ikshavaktve Abravit. That is the word breakups. And the Anvaya will be Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Aham Vivasvate Imam Avyayam Yogam Proktavan. Full stop. Aham Vivasvate Imam Avyayam Yogam Proktavan. Full stop. Vivasvan Manave Praha. Full stop. Manuhu Ikshavaktve Abravit. Full stop. Okay. Here, the parampara, the lineage is being mentioned. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Lord said, Aham Vivasvate Imam Avyayam Yogam Proktavan. Okay. Aham, I, Vivasvate, to Vivasvataha. Vivasvataha is Surya, sun god. Aham Vivasvatehe, I, Imam Avyayam Yogam. This unchanging knowledge, Avyayam, this knowledge which does not change. So Imam, this unchanging Yogam. Yogam here is the knowledge, Jnānayoga. Vivasvate, to the sun god, Proktavan, I have taught. So I taught this Jnānayoga to Surya Devata. Okay, that is the first sentence. And Vivaswan Manave Praha. Vivaswan taught to Manu. Praha means taught or said. So Vivaswan taught that yoga to Manu, full stop. Then Manuhu Ikshvakve Abravit. Manuhu taught to Ikshvaku Abravit. He taught. So this is the basic lineage being talked about. So this chapter is now going to detail Jnana-yoga. And before coming to Jnana-yoga, in the first, I think it's the first 8 verses. In the first 8 verses, Krishna takes a small little side step. He takes a diversion. And in this diversion, he is going to cover 2 topics. One is Gita Stutihi, the greatness of the Gita. And one is some knowledge he is giving us about Avatara. So Avatara is supposed to be secret knowledge, not known to everybody. So it's called Avatara Rahasyam. Rahasyam meaning that particular secret of the Avatara. So 2 things he will cover. The greatness of the Gita, that is Gita Stutihi, and Avatara Rahasyam. What is the Avatara of the Lord? What does it mean? What does it do? When is it born? All those things will be covered. So Krishna says that Gita is the condensed form of the Veda itself. He doesn't, we must note this very carefully. He has never, in the Gita, never has he claimed that there is an originality to the teaching. It is a beginningless teaching belonging to the Veda alone. And we say Vedas aparushaya because it doesn't belong to mankind at all. And therefore, the beginning of the Veda we cannot trace at all. And therefore, in tradition, the Vedas are looked upon as a gift from Lord Brahmaji himself through the rishis. And that is why we look upon Veda as a Paurusheya Shastram. Shastram which is not been revealed by any human hand. We looked upon as a revelation. What does Veda teach? It contains all the teachings required for us to attain material prosperity and as well as spiritual fulfillment. So 2 things are there in the Veda, 2 things which every human being requires: material prosperity and spiritual prosperity. And here Krishna says that somewhere along the way, people lost interest in this teaching, and therefore this teaching became weaker and weaker. And whenever the teaching becomes weak and there is danger of the teaching be lost, then he says that I, as Bhagavan, one of my roles is what? To ensure the teaching is not lost. And therefore I have to take an avatara. And therefore whatever roles I play, whatever roles you read in the Puranas, they are all incidental, because the primary role of the Lord is what? Functioning as a guru for knowledge. So he says in the last chapter, in 18th chapter, he says, hey Arjuna, I love that person the most who teaches Gita. So that particular statement is made because he is doing the job which I am supposed to do. Any Gita teacher I love because he is propagating the Gita, and that person is very, very close to me. And that person will definitely get moksha, he says. Okay, to come back to this chapter, he says, Aham imam yogam proktavan. Hey Arjuna, the same teaching I have taught before, not in the form of the Bhagavad Gita, but in another name, which is the Veda. And now again, this same teaching I am teaching you, but it's got a new name. The container is different, but the content is the same. So I am teaching in what is now Bhagavad Gita on the battlefield. Previously, I had given the teaching as the Veda itself. I am only giving a new name, Jnānayoga, Karma Yoga. And the question is, did you teach before? Arjuna can ask. You said you teach before. Then who do you teach? So in anticipation of that question, Krishna says, Vivasvati, Surya Bhagavan, I revealed this wisdom to Vivaswan. So Vivaswan is Surya Bhagavan. Vivaha is, Vivas basically means life, energy. And the one who gives energy is Vivaswan. So Vivaswan is derived from Vivas. Vivas itself means life. And life means energy. And therefore Vivaswan is the one who gives energy. And here Vivasvan means not the Surya Golakam. Tatvabodha terms. Okay, I'm using Tatvabodha terms. I hope you're all familiar. It doesn't mean the Surya Mandalam, the planet or the physical form of Surya, because the physical form of Surya is what? It's a Golakam. A Golakam is Anatma. Golakam cannot be taught anything. Therefore, when you say Vivasvan over here, when you say Surya Devata over here, it means Surya Devata, the conscious Devata. And what did he teach him? Avyayam Yogam. This teaching which is eternal, which cannot change, which was valid thousands of years ago, and it is valid today also. And that is why we call this teaching Sanatana Dharma, that which is ever there. So Avyayam here is Sanatanam. And why is it Sanatanam? Because of the Guru Shishya Parampara. So in the Parampara itself is the chain. The Parampara is the chain, right? Guru, Shishya, Shishya becomes Guru. Again he teaches, he has a Shishya. So it's the chain. So every individual member of this chain is finite or infinite. He is finite. But the chain is infinite. The Parampara is infinite. Because Krishna taught long, long ago. And this Bhagavad Gita is still being taught. And what did therefore this Vivasvan do? That is being said here. Did Vivasvan stop with the teaching that Krishna gave him? No. That Easwara gave him? No. Vivasvan Manave Praha. So Vivasvan taught this to his son, who is known as Manu. So Manu is the name of Vivasvan's son. He also belongs to Surya Vamsha, Surya tradition. And just to give very brief background, Srishti is divided into 14 different time periods. Every Srishti, every cycle of creation is divided into 14 different time periods. They are called Manvantaras, 14 Manvantaras. Each Manvantara has 71 Chaturyugas. So we'll talk about this a bit more in detail. Later chapter 8, I think. But here, just remember that Srishti itself is divided into 14 time periods called Manvantaras, and each Manvantara has 71 Chaturyugas. Okay. And each Manvantara is presided over by one Devata who is called a Manu. And now we are supposed to be in the 7th Manvantara and presided over by Vaivasvata Manu, son of Vivasvan. So Surya Devata's son is Manu, and he is supposed to be the presiding deity of this Manvantara, which is why we are all called Manuputras, Manavaha. The word Manava comes from Manu, Manuputras. We are all the sons of Manu. Okay. And what did Manu do? Did he keep quiet? No. Manuhu Ikshvakave Bravit. So Ikshvaku is Manu's son. Manu was Surya Devata's son. So Ikshvaku is Surya Devata's grandson. Manu taught this to his son. So in this, what is being brought out is that the tradition is being brought out. The spiritual teaching has been coming down from Guru to his Shishya. That Shishya, after learning properly, he becomes a Guru himself and he teaches a further Shishya. And therefore, that is the Parampara, the lineage. And in our tradition, you should know that there are two very clear Paramparas. One is called a Kshatriya Parampara and one is called a Brahmana Parampara. So you will see in some of the Upanishads, Sanaka, Sanatha, Sanathana, Sanatana, all these are representing the Brahmana Parampara, right? The Sannyasi Parampara. And there is another Parampara called the Kshatriya Parampara, where this is, for example, Krishna. So Vivasvan, Manu, Krishna, all these represent the Grihastha Kshatriya Parampara. And why is Krishna quoting the Manu Parampara? Because he himself is Kshatriya. The student belongs to Kshatriya, so he is quoting that Parampara. How do we know they were Kshatriyas? Because they were all Grihasthas. They are on the battlefield, Kshatriyas. And one idea being not explicitly stated, but being pointed out here is that Grihasthas can also get moksha. Grihasthas can be jnanis. You need not be a sannyasi for that. So this flow of knowledge from teacher to student, and the student becomes a teacher, and again to student, is called a sampradaya. And Sampradaya is very important. Why is Sampradaya very important? Because whenever you have a teacher, that teacher should belong to a Sampradaya. Why? Because it shows that that teacher has been taught. Why is this so important? By now you should know. Why is it so important that the teachers have been taught?
Keep the Guru Parampara lineage.
So
And
that
the
we
teaching is
the
the way it
teachings.
is.
So that the teaching is transferred as it is from the beginning to the end.
There's no
Yes, there is no
distortion
mixing.
in the
There's no
teaching.
mixing.
It has come down to us as it was given.
As it is.
Yeah. So this Sampradaya is important because the one who is taught knows how he has been taught. The teaching, process, unfolding as it is called, to give something, then you give further, then you say something else which contradicts the first thing, but you are doing it in sequence. So there is a way of teaching. It is not random teaching. It is systematic teaching of the Shastra. And Shastra must be taught systematically, otherwise you will not understand at all. Therefore, Sampradaya is important because the teacher has been properly taught, is understood only when he is part of the Sampradaya. In fact, somewhere else Shankara says that if you have a teacher who is not belonging to a Sampradaya, you should avoid him as much as you avoid a fool. He equates the fool who knows nothing with the teacher who is not part of a parampara. And this you will see because there are many gurus today, gurus in inverted brackets, who are not part of a parampara, who are not part of the Sampradaya, and yet they teach knowledge. And then they make statements like it is not necessary to look at the Veda at all. It's not necessary to look at Shastram at all. Everything occurs in the mind in Samadhi. All these statements are made. These statements come out of a person who has not been properly taught. We are not denying that he may be a jnani. Because of prarabdha karma, he may be a jnani. But since he has not been subject to the teaching tradition, he is not able to teach properly. So such a person should be avoided because that is what Shankara says. Such a person, even though he is a jnani, he should be avoided because if he doesn't know how to teach, what value is his jnanam to you? He may be a jnani, it's good for him. But unless he knows how to transfer that knowledge in the appropriate manner, his value to you as a teacher is useless. And Shankara adds here that Krishna is teaching for giving strength to Kshatriyas. And it's a very nice statement because true power is what? Jnanam alone. Power without Jnanam is extremely dangerous. We can see this in today's public life. What all is happening in Maharashtra. Without knowledge, power is extremely dangerous. The Lord Acton said, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. What can be more true than that? One more thing we need to understand is this Jnanam, it is taught as a statement of fact. Okay, Jnanam is not a promise. The teacher who is from the Sampradaya will not tell you that, yes, if you do this, if you do that, you will become Brahman. Right? The statement, for example, what is the teaching statement? Tattvamasi. Tattvamasi is not a promise. It is a statement of fact. What does it mean? You are Brahman. And there is no condition attached. It doesn't say you are Brahman provided you do this or you are Brahman provided you do that. He says Tattvamasi is a statement of fact. You are Brahman. It's not a promise. It's like saying water boils at 100 degrees, right? Celsius. It's a statement of fact. And therefore, Shankara says, Samyak Darshana Nishtha. This yoga is Samyak Darshana Nishtha, abiding in the right understanding. The right understanding is what we call binary format. That is the right understanding. And Shankara says this particular Jnānayoga, Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, this Samyak Darshana Nishtha, abiding in the right knowledge. That Nishtha word is very important, that abidance. Nothing more is needed. That very Nishtha has the other name called moksha. Okay. Now we chant the next verse, verse number 2. Evam parampara praptam
एवं परम्परा
imam rajarshayo viduhu
एवं राजर्षयो विदुः
sakale neha mahata
सकाले
कालेनेह महता
yogo nashtha parantapa.
योगो नश्यन्तः
Okay, so again we go to the grammar. Evam parampara praptam imam. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayah vidu. Saha kalena iha. That word is broken into two. Kalena iha mahata yogaha nashtaha parantapa. Anvaya is evam rajarshaya. Rajarshaya has to be broken into two pieces. Rajaha rishayaha. Raja rishis. Evam rajaha rishayaha parampara praptam imam viduhu. Full stop. Iha sahayogaha mahata kalena nashtaha parantapa. So he says Raja Rishayaha evam parampara praptam imam viduhu. So this Raja Rishaya means kings who were rishis. Rajas who were rishis are called Raja Rishis. Raja Rishis, kings who were rishis, what do? Viduhu, they know imam. Imam is what? This knowledge. So Raja Rishaya, imam viduhu. These Raja Rishis, the kings who were sages, who were jnanis, they know this knowledge. How do they know? Evam parampara praptam. In this way they know. Which way? Handing down through the parampara. From generation to generation is the parampara. Praptam means they got this knowledge. Paramparaya. Through the parampara they got the knowledge. And then, so that was the first statement. That all the Raja Rishis had this knowledge because they got this knowledge in the same way. That is to say, handed down from Guru to Shishya, Shishya to Guru, and so on. So that is parampara prapta. Then mahata, because of kalena mahata. Kala is time. Mahata means long. Kalena mahata means long lapse of time. Because of passage of long time, hey Arjuna, hey Parantapaha, what happened? Saha yogaha iha nashtaha. That yoga, iha, in this world, nashtaha, became lost. So, hey Arjuna, the kings who were jnanis knew this knowledge, had this knowledge, and they were given to it in the same tradition, from Guru to Shishya, and then Shishya became Guru, then Guru to Shishya, and so on. That is a parampara. They had this knowledge. But due to a long passage of time, that that knowledge is now lost to this world. So Parantapa, Shankara has not explained Parantapa so far. Okay, so he explains. Very nice explanation. Paraha. Paraha means Atmanaha Vipakshaha. His words. Atmana Vipakshaha. So Atmanaha here, remember, is not Satchit Ananda Atma. Literally, what is the meaning of Atma?
Self.
Self. I. Okay, Mai, the Hindi Mai. Me. That is Atma. So Atmanaha Vipakshaha. Vipakshaha means the enemy. So Paraha is equal to Atmanaha Vipakshaha. So Atmanaha here is what we call reflexive pronoun. Like I, myself. Myself is a reflexive pronoun referring to me. That is Atmanaha. So enemies of myself. Atmanaha Vipakshaha. That is called Paraha. So Paraha Tapayati. That person who burns his enemies. That is called Parantapa. The one who destroys his own enemies. So that is the explanation of Parantapa, which is another name for Arjuna. And he says, Evam Parampara Praptam. This teaching has been coming down in the Guru Shishya Parampara. Remember that we often call Jnanam as, we often call Gangaji as Jnana Ganga, the flow of knowledge. The comparison is because Ganga is perennial, it never dries up. Jnanam is also perennial, it never dries up. Another thing is Ganga came from Lord Shiva said, Jnanam also comes Sadashiva Samarambha from the same Lord. And this Ganga removes all the impurities. What about Jnanam? Gita Mahatmyam says, Mala nirmochanam pumsam jalatsnanam dine dine sakrit gitam bhasisnanam samsara malanashanam. Do you remember this? Do you chant it regularly?
Yes.
Mala nirmochanam pumsam. What does it mean? Mala nirmochanam pumsam. The human being, he takes away the malam from his body. How? Jalasnanam dine dine. By bathing in the waters, jalasnanam dine dine, day after day. Every day he has to bathe in the waters to remove the dirt from his body. But Sakrid Geetam Bhasisnanam. Sakrid means once. Gita Ambhasam means waters of the Gita. So Sakrit Geetam Bhasisnanam, by bathing once in the waters of the Gita, samsara malanashanam. That one knowledge you get from the Gita, once only you need it. Samsara malanashanam destroys the entire malam of samsara and makes you free. So we should take a daily dip in Gita Ganga, and then samsara malam will go away. And therefore he says, Gita Gangolakam Pitva Punarjanma Navedyate. Having drunk from the waters of the Gita, Punarjanma Navedyate. Punarjanmam will not happen. What is your daily dip? The daily dip is the study of the Gita. And who knew about all this? Rajarsha Viduhu. All the Raja Rishis. In the Puranas, you will come across many kings who were also Jnanis. So they had this wisdom, even though they were very much involved in worldly activities. So these kings were not sannyasis. They stayed in the palace. They were very, very busy running entire kingdoms. They were busy fighting wars. But they were jnanis. And therefore Krishna is saying that this teaching has been always available in the form of anadi parampara. Eternal teaching tradition has been available. If that is so, if Krishna is saying that anadi parampara was there, then why should he teach it now? Why did he take avatar? He says gradually people started losing interest because distractions were many, right? Nowadays you have some 1,000 TV channels. So on one channel, some you'll find that one heroine is being beaten up by a mother-in-law. On another channel, you'll find that same heroine is beating up all the gundas. Thoroughly confusing, right? And in all this entertainment, who has time for Gita? Right? And therefore he says, Saha Yoga Nashtaha. This teaching disappeared from the earth. And interestingly, if you look at Panani's grammar, Pananis does not mention Nashtaha as destruction. Panani's interpretation is Nashaha is equal to Adarshane. Destruction means not visible. And therefore he's saying that knowledge, you cannot use the word Nashtaha over here. Why? Because he has said that this knowledge is eternal. It's always there. And therefore it is not Nashtaha. Therefore, Nashaha has to be taken as Adarshane. The knowledge was not clearly available to everybody because they were not focused anymore. And why was it not available? Mahata Kalena. Due to a long passage of time, more and more people were going away from Jnanam. Less and less people were interested in this knowledge. So Krishna doesn't give a reason here for the weakening of the Jnanam. So Shankara adds a comment saying that people have become more and more extroverted. They are becoming more and more addicted to sense organs, to sense objects. And in that addiction for sense objects, you will find there is no time for Shastra. So that is the reason why he says, Krishna says, Mata Kalena Yoga Ashtaha. By passage of time, Because people focused more and more on their sense organs and sensory objects, they found no time or value for Shastram. And therefore, it's as if Shastram became lost. So Krishna took avatar. Why was it necessary to restore Dharma? Because without Dharma, there will be no peace and no security on earth. In fact, peace, security, and happiness, which are the essential condition for a fulfilled human life, that can be found only in those places where Dharma is established. So Shankara adds a comment here saying that Bhagavan noted this problem on earth and then decided that it was time to come down, take an avatar to rectify the situation. Okay. So I can stop here if you have questions. If you don't have any questions, I can go with one more verse. It's up to you.
Acharya,
Yes, John.
the first verse, you mentioned Ayam Yoga Uktaha.
Mhm.
What was the meaning of this?
Sorry?
When you said Ayam Yoga Uktaha,
This Karma Yoga has already been talked about. Ayam Yoga Yuktaha means this yoga, this Karma Yoga Uktaha has already been discussed in chapter 2 and 3.
thank you.
Ravi sir, I had a question, but it's not related to today's class. You want me to ask now or later?
No, you can ask.
I'm in the ashram, Raviji, and then here in one of the Upanishads of Sivananda's book, they were reading during the satsang, and Swami Sivananda talked about the Ishta Devta Darshana. So I would like to hear your, according to the Vedantic view, what is it like? Because everything is Brahman, then is Ishta Devta Darshana possible?
See, the scriptures say that, Ishvara is there, right? And a lot of scriptures, Puranas, Itihasas, they talk about Darshana. So, because scriptures say that, because scriptures mention that people had Darshana, therefore we don't say that is not possible. The scriptures are primary for us. Now tell me, if you are thinking about everything is Brahman, you are also Brahman, but you are visible in a form, are you not?
Yes.
So if Brahman can, or if Ishvara can ensure that we have a body, why can he not ensure that a temporary body is available for a devotee who has not reached the stage where he has come to Arupa Ishvara, where he has come to formless Ishvara? And if by way of encouragement, let us say, that he gives him a darshan. What is wrong with that? Nothing is wrong with that. There is nothing illogical about that argument. Only thing you should ask yourself is that as a Vedantic, why would I even try to have darshan of a form? Because a form is also limited, isn't it? The moment you have a form, you are limited in time and space. Why would I want to have darshan of a limited devata when I can have darshan of an unlimited Brahman as myself?
Acharya.
Yes, John.
So in the last verse, we mentioned about the king rishis.
Yes.
And one very famous that Krishna mentions in the Gita is King Janaka.
Yeah.
We want to read more about his story about this king. In which text is mentioned?
You find it, Janaka was who? A very famous gentleman.
The Mahabharata.
Yes. Who's Janaka's daughter?
Sita.
Who is Janaki?
Sita.
So Janaka's daughter is Janaki. You'll find it in Mahabharata also, you'll find in Puranas, you will find. So there's something called Bhagavatam, a book. We can read about that also. In fact, there are so many stories, about And Janaka is a story, it's a very famous story about Janaka. I don't know if you know it. Janaka was in a Gurukul. I forget the name of the rishi who was his guru. He was in a Gurukul with many other, Gurukul Vasis. Okay. Now the Gurukul Vasis used to laugh at Janaka. Well, because Janaka was a king, right? And he had a lot of money. And they thought that his staying in the Gurukul was, just show. That because he was a king, why is he coming and staying in the Gurukul? And they used to get more angry because the Guru used to pay special attention to Janaka. And they all thought the Guru paid special attention to Janaka because Janaka was a rich and a king. So one day the Guru decided to teach them all a lesson. So when they were all in class, the Guru, spread a rumor that the place where the students should stay, the dormitory or whatever, had caught fire. And we also said that the palace had caught fire. Janaka's palace had caught fire. And what happened? The moment the rumor came, all these students, they ran to their respective dormitories to retrieve their belongings. It is only Janaka who didn't move. Janaka kept sitting there to finish the class. And when all the students came back, they all realized it was everything was a rumor only. Then the Guru told them that, you were wondering why I paid special attention to Janaka. It is because of this. The fact that he didn't care about his palace burning, while you, who had probably only one shirt or one pant, you ran to get them. There are many stories like this. You'll find them scattered across the entire Puranas and Mahabharata, Ramayana. You have to read the originals. If you read, these what they call abridged versions, which are of course more readable, you are unlikely to come across these small stories. Yeah. Rinku, I can't hear you. You'll have to bring the mic closer to your.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Acharya ji, regarding the sampradaya, if you could just please elaborate what are the various sampradayas, just a brief outlay. And we are belonging to the Shankaracharya
We are
sampradaya.
belonging to Shankaracharya Sampradaya.
So if you could just mention other
You
sampradayas.
have others. You are Nath Sampradaya for yogis. You have many. There's no point getting into that at all.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Ravi ji, good morning.
Yes, Madhavi.
Yeah. So you have mentioned about Parantapa as enemies, one who kills the enemies within. Could you please once again?
No, not within. Atmanaha means myself, enemies of myself. So here, Parantapa, he addresses Arjuna because Arjuna kills his enemies on the battlefield. His enemies get burnt as if. So there's interpretation of internal enemies, okay, that's a Vedantic interpretation. But this is the battlefield. He's addressing Arjuna as Parantapa, is the one who kills the enemies on the battlefield. Yes, Deepa.
राजा जनक के गुरु का नाम था अष्टाव्रत.
Okay.
Acharya,
Yes, Mr. Kumar.
you mentioned that there is a lineage in the first verse, which is the Lord taught the son, and the son taught Manu, and Manu to his son.
Yeah.
And then, in some sense, the Lord has also taught Arjuna. I'm curious to know if Arjuna also acted as a teacher and taught someone.
No. Not that I know of. Because in the parampara, when you give the names of the parampara, Arjuna's name doesn't come. So it's not necessary that every student will become a teacher, okay? Yes, Pandana, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, Acharya. I was wondering about Ramana Maharishi. We know he didn't do any karma, but did he? There's also no mention of him having come to a guru and learned Shastra, no?
That's what. So all this has to be taken as him having completed all that in the previous life, and therefore only little bit was left. And that's why in this life he got Atmajnanam almost immediately. So his entire Shravanam, Mananam, Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga would have to be taken as having been completed in an earlier life.
Right. That also explains a lot of these possibly enlightened masters in this life who don't belong to a parampara and teach. So they
See,
might
Ramana
be
Maharishi
jnanis.
himself, if you see his teaching, it is not a systematic teaching. You cannot understand Ramana Maharishi's teaching without the explanation from a Vedantic guru. Though Ramana Maharishi we take as one of the revered gurus in our tradition, but he himself doesn't teach systematically. He simply says, "Enquire who you are." And if you look at all these, there are a lot of Englishmen who were Ramana Maharishi's disciples. They have written a lot of books. I don't know if you've read any. If you read those books, it gives you no input as to what he meant by know who you are, know yourself. His question was ask. His main teaching was ask, who am I? That who am I question leads you nowhere unless there is a basic teaching of the Shastram as who you are. That's the point. And therefore, Ramana Maharishi cannot be taken as a Sampradaya guru. That is, see, the thing is that he may have got Karma Yoga and everything has been had, but the Sampradaya teaching has to be in this Janma. Unless you had a guru in this Janma, you will not be able to teach properly.
I see.
That is why we say Sampradaya, so that we know that yes, he had a teacher. Because if somebody had a teacher in the previous Janma and he was born now, you don't know, right? You don't know whether he's got a teacher or not. You have only his word to go by.
Correct.
So
Yeah, I was wondering why we accept Ramana Maharishi in the Advaita Vedanta
we
tradition.
accept
But
as an enlightened person, we don't accept as a Sampradaya guru.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Acharya,
Yes, Joe.
you also mentioned Tarak Paryam for when you refer to the essence of the teaching. Of the
Tatparyam.
Tat Paryam.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for your patience. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Devavasishyate Om Shanti Shanti. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your patience.
Acharya.
Thank you, Ravi.
Thank you, Acharya ji.